Hi everyone, Josh Knight the First here with another episode of Exade Replay, coming to you with episode 22 of the series. Let's get right into it. So here we are, yet another week into Kamen Rider Exade. Yes, Excite hasn't been played at the beginning in a while. We're used to that. We hate it. We wish it was there. That's besides the point. So story. Let's talk about story for this week. Every week, Toei tries to prove to us that they can fit that much more story within this 23-minute time period, and boy did they do it this week. They gave us a doozy as far as backstory is concerned for both Emu and Kuroto-dan, as well as development for the other writers, so let's go ahead and talk about that. So at the top of the episode, we see that Hiro is looking for clues in Kirya Kujo's personal artifacts, trying to figure out if there's something that can help with the case as to why Kuroto-dan killed him, or if there's something that can help them with the fight against the Bugster virus. Now we see that he has these personal effects delivered to him by the character of Nishiwaki, who again is a returning guest character. He's played by Takuya Negishi, who you would know as the main character from Ultraman Ginga. Now over on the other side of town, we see that we're dealing with our patient for the week, who happens to be Kuroto-dan, just like last week's preview told us. We see why he has the Bugster virus later on in the episode, but to begin with, we see more of his plans as they pertain to Kamen Rider Chronicle, this game he's been developing. Based off the success of his plan as we've seen it over the last few episodes, we see that he needs the data from 3 more actual Bugsters from the Gashots that we've already seen in the series. He needs Shakariki Sports, he needs Dore Mi Fa Beat, and he needs Drago Knight Hunter Z. Now as far as obtaining that data goes, we see he's going to get one of them in this episode, and then 2 other ones probably pertain to characters we're already familiar with. When you think about it, Shakariki Sports is going to get taken care of this episode, but as far as Dore Mi Fa Beat and Drago Knight Hunter Z, those are 2 characters we already know. Drago Knight Hunter Z, that was Graphite, and Dore Mi Fa Beat, that's Pulpy. So let's think about that. If those are the characters we've already been introduced to, and one is kind of dead, maybe they're not so dead as far as we know. But that aside, we see that the kibosh is kind of put on his plans when the Ministry of Health raids his current lair. They come in and they realize that, oh, this is where he's been hiding. Hey, guess what? We're charging you with bioterrorism. Get all the stuff. Get it out of here. And this does seem to put a legit damper on Kuroto-dan's plans. Now, just as he's about to be brought in for questioning by the Ministry of Health, it just so happens, lo and behold, there's a Bugster inside him, which happens to be one of the Bugsters he needs for the information for Kamen Rider Chronicle that he's working on. His name's Charlie. He's the Shakariki Sports Bugster. So this is all very convenient. If you didn't realize where this episode was going to go, you can kind of see all of the little hints, or rather big hints, they were dropping early in this episode. Now once everybody figures out that Kuroto-dan is our patient for the episode, we actually see quite a bit of growth shown on screen from 2 characters. One I was sure of, and the other one I wasn't so sure of, but I actually like it, specifically Hiro and Poppy, or rather Asuna, her more normal form. Now as far as Hiro is concerned, he's talking about sharing Emu's drive to avenge the people who have been lost to the Bugster virus. He feels that he should share in that. I also want to avenge those people who have been lost to this virus, basically to Kuroto-dan's plans. And if he's starting to add on to this idea of an avenging writer, then that means we have 2 like-minded writers there in a series. Basically, they could be the double writers of the series, the 2 that work together most often with a shared goal. I like that in so many ways that I can't even describe. The fact that we can share that again, 2 double writers here in the show. Granted, yes, we're still working on Snipe there, but as far as that old trope goes, again, all the way back to the original series, I appreciate that we seem to be bringing that back. Now as far as Asuna goes, we see her take quite the dramatic turn when they actually bring in Kuroto-dan to the CR, calling him out on all the evil deeds he's done, for all the people that he's hurt and killed in the process of trying to make this game of his. That's not necessarily something I expected out of Asuna, because of the fact that she has to balance that personality out with Poppy People Papo, who we do see later on in the episode. I didn't think that she was going to be that hurt by what he's done. I didn't think she was going to take it to heart that much, but apparently she has. It actually hurts her that he's hurt other people. Good job on growing her as a character. And then for a good chunk of the rest of the episode, we see this dual storyline going on, with Kuroto-dan giving us a mouthful of a story about his backstory and how it directly relates to Emu, and on the other side of town, we see that Taiga is visiting Skuru there at the Genmu Corporation to see an update about this Gashot he commissioned him to create to directly combat Kuroto-dan's plans. So we'll go ahead and talk about Taiga on the other side of town first, since that's the easier thing to cover. So long story short, we see that Hiro has retrieved this data data off of a laptop that Kujo had left behind, which has a program in mind for reprogramming Bugster data, which is exactly what they need to go ahead and defeat Genmu. So they program that into this gacha that Skudu has been working on. Now, as far as that goes, it means a lot to me that even though since Christmas we've lost Kiryu Kujo, he's still that relevant to the story. He's even providing some much needed ammo in the fight against Genmu. It's very important to me, as somebody who's been watching the show for several seasons, that they're not dropping that plot thread. They're keeping him relevant even now in death. So in that sense, he's even stronger of a character than you originally thought he was, because he had all of these things laid out. He had his data ready on that laptop, he just needed somebody to find it. So good on the writers for keeping Kujo relevant. Now, as far as Kuroto Dan's story is concerned, wow, okay, so if I thought that other series weren't so great about tying threads together, about making the story very cohesive, and leaving things kind of out there to not be answered later on, Kiva, I'm looking at you, in this season, in Ex-Aid, we see that they have tied together Kuroto Dan's story so deeply into the lore they've already set up for the rest of the series, and I'll just briefly go through it right now. So it turns out that as a kid, Emu had sent a fan letter over to Kuroto Dan there at the Genmu Corporation, since back in the year 2000 he was programming a lot of games for the company. When he saw this letter, Emu seemed to have included all of these plans for ideas for games that he had. Kuroto Dan couldn't take it because these ideas were very good, and at this point in his life, Kuroto Dan thought he was on top of the mountain, much as he thinks now. But when he saw that somebody else could be just as inspired and create games other than him, this drove him to be very insecure. Now mind you, this is right after the events of the flashback from last episode when he found the Bugster virus. So what he ends up doing is making a prototype game called Mighty Action C, sending it to Kid Emu, and that was loaded with Bugster virus. That is when Emu was originally infected. It's Kuroto Dan's fault that he has Bugster virus at all. It didn't just pop out of him, it showed up because he infected him. So not only does he infect him, he waits until the Bugster virus has matured, basically right after that match with Saibaniko and that other flashback, and then has Zaizen Michihiko from the Heisei Generations movie operate on him to harvest the Bugster virus, and that's how Zero Day happened. Now this blows my mind that they're able to tell this much story in this short amount of time, but also in addition to that, they've been able to show that Kuroto Dan has basically been screwing with Emu since the year 2000, for 16 years now. That's a bit much. Now I know a couple of episodes ago I talked about how in certain ways Kuroto Dan, or Genmu, was starting to remind me of Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and here it's a little bit more so, and I'll tell you why. Because in this story, when you see that there's really nothing that Emu has done wrong, and he has been made the target of Kuroto Dan's malevolence for so many years, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just kind of happening because he was there. And yes, that's great for making you hate him, but aside from that, it's a bit much. I like the fact that the character is so deliciously evil, but now we're adding a little bit too much on top. You know, if you make a perfect sundae, you want to keep it there, but then if you start adding too much chocolate sauce on there, it might be a bit much, and that's how I'm starting to take his character. But then after all of this information is dumped on us, we see this giant sort of death note, everything's gone all according to Keikaku, translators note Keikaku means plan, where Genmu decides that he's going to drop the act. He's been putting on an act this whole time. He infected himself with Bugster virus on purpose, and at the same time that he's in the CR, he has other Bugster soldiers attacking the Genmu Corporation directly, all because he's trying to take the corporation back. I don't get why that works the way it does. Now admittedly, during that fight, it's worth it to see that Emu blows on his cartridge again before he transforms into Mighty Brothers XX. That's great, I love that reference. But aside from that, getting into the actual fights itself, I don't see exactly how this all fits together, but I guess that's what they were going for. The reason being, we see this giant display of power from Genmu, from Kuroto Dan, that he had this all planned out. He knew that he needed to infect himself to get away from the Ministry of Health, because in that sense, it's the same as if you're being arrested by the cops. If you're hurt in the process of being arrested, they have to treat you first before they actually take you to jail. Kind of the same thing here, only we're dealing with the Ministry of Health not the cops. Now that brings up an interesting point that I want to talk about as far as tying this back to the rest of the story that we've been told. So if we're trying to have the Ministry of Health look into this and actually bring up Kuroto-dan on some sort of charges of bioterrorism earlier in the episode, it's kind of funny that the cops weren't involved at all. And if that was the case, they would have to make a case against Kuroto-dan directly, because he's also responsible for murder. Now, if the Ministry of Health is going to bring Kuroto-dan up on charges of bioterrorism, technically he should also be brought up on charges of murder. Not even technically, he murdered someone. So if that's the case, we have an opportunity there for other police writers, or rather other characters from other Kamen Rider series in recent times that were policemen, to come in on the show, much like Tomari Shinnosuke from Heisei Generations from Kamen Rider Drive. He could show up here in the show to help make a case against him. This is a great opportunity, but I'm afraid that they're probably not going to go for it. Just something I'd like to know. But when all this is said and done, we see that Genmu has an idea of how he's going to get his corporation back. First, he's going to corrupt Emu's driver to where he can't transform with his updated Genmu zombie gamer power. Now, I'm not certain exactly how that's supposed to work, other than these faceless zombies before are now clones of Genmu zombie gamer. Much the same on the other side of town with the assault on the Genmu Corporation, we have a seemingly fake Genmu attacking Snipe and Brave, but we don't explain where he came from. And then at the end, Genmu's in a nice suit and he walks in and says, "Oh, I'm home," and that's where the episode ends. So I'm trying to figure out where exactly are they going with this. Because all things considered, somebody knows that he's done something wrong. As of last week, the cops know that Kuroto-dan is alive. As of this week, the Ministry of Health knows where he's been. So he can't just walk into his corporation, can he? That and a few other loose ends are going to have to be answered next week when we see the rest of Genmu's plan, and we also see how that new Gashot is going to work when it's given to Emu for his maximum transformation. That's a lot to look forward to, and that's probably going to take the whole episode as well. So this is a lot to take in. I know you guys have been listening to me talk for several minutes, but I want to hear what you think. So what about Hiro's growth as a character? Do you like that his ideologies are starting to line up with Emu? Do you think it's good that he's going to be a possible double writer alongside him? What about Kuroto-dan? As far as his villainy is concerned, how does he line up with other villains from other Rider series in the last couple of years? And as far as the upcoming Bugsters that we might see in the series, do you think we might see the return of Graphite later on in the show? You tell me in the comments below. And of course, during the week, you can always talk to me over on social media. On Twitter, I'm at JoshKnight1st. This has been episode 22 of Exade Replay for episode 22 of the series, Engineered History. I'm Josh Knight the First. I'll see you guys again next week.